I've been a poor sleeper my whole life. I've spent hundreds of hours researching on how to feel more energetic during the day. I've spoken to, I would say, more than 100 people on this topic. It's been something that's interested me my whole life just because I have been a pretty poor sleeper. And I've come to a conclusion. For 95% of people, it's really four things: caffeine intake, exercise, diet, and sleep hygiene. Now, some people have legitimate medical issues, and that's fine, but that's a really small percentage. For the most part, through what I've found, this is the four things that you really should concentrate on if you really want to have a more energetic day. First things first is coffee. Most people that drink caffeine will be drinking coffee almost every day. It's generally because of two reasons. One, its stimulant properties. It wakes you up, gets you excited, gets you motivated. And two, it's slightly tied in with how dopamine is released in your brain. If you're interested about what dopamine is, or if you've never heard about it and want to learn a little bit about it, click up here. It should be there, maybe there. I made a video about dopamine and a detox that I did from it. Check it out. Might learn a little bit about it from there. Most people drink it every day. I'm going to scream out the bleeding obvious. You might be drinking too much caffeine. Some people will be honest and they'll say, yeah, I definitely drink too much caffeine. But some people might not really realize how much caffeine they're actually drinking. So let me try and explain to you how caffeine works, and why you drink it almost every day and why you feel like you kind of need it. In your head, you have a bunch of adenosine receptors. They're like little cups, like that. When you wake up in the morning, these receptors are empty. They're ready to capture adenosine throughout the day. In the morning, you wake up with nothing. They're empty. And you wake up with almost no adenosine in your brain. As the day goes along, your brain produces adenosine and it floats around and then eventually gets captured in one of these receptors. When enough of these receptors have captured adenosine, it sends a signal to the brain, and that makes you feel drowsy, makes you feel tired. And eventually, at the end of the day, you feel tired and you go to sleep. If you wake up in the morning and this adenosine receptor has got nothing in it, and you drink a cup of coffee, what happens is that caffeine molecule floats over and sits in the adenosine's place. And then as adenosine's flying around, it can't get in because that caffeine is there blocking it. What that results is you don't get any of those signals from this receptor going out to you to say, hey, you're getting drowsy. Caffeine blocks it, and that's why you feel alert and awake and all those things. Eventually, your brain processes the caffeine, and then adenosine can get captured by that receptor. The problem is once you start drinking caffeine regularly, your body realizes that these adenosine receptors are blocked with that caffeine, and it starts to produce more adenosine, which means that more of those receptors that are still catching that adenosine capture more, which makes you feel tired, which then makes you go for another cup of coffee, which then makes your body produce more adenosine. You can see how this cycle can viciously kind of get out of control. It's also why if you drink caffeine during the day, in the middle of the afternoon, like that typical 3:30itis, if you've ever heard of that happens, that's because the caffeine is getting processed and then there's a rush of adenosine being absorbed in your head and you feel really drowsy. So how much is too much caffeine really? Well, let's talk numbers. If you go to a cafe and you order a cup of coffee, like an espresso shot or a latte or a cappuccino or something like that, you're generally going to get 100 milligrams of caffeine. If you get a long black or a strong coffee, that's generally 2 shots, which is 200 milligrams of caffeine. Those numbers don't really mean too much, so let me try and put it into a bit of perspective with time. If you have a cup of coffee at 8 a.m., after about 6 hours, you're going to have half of the amount of caffeine still floating around in your body. It takes your body about 6 hours, 5 to 7 depending on the person. Let's say 6. 6 hours to get rid of half of that caffeine. If you have a coffee at midday, at 8 p.m. you have about a third of the caffeine still floating around in your body. If you have a 2 p.m. coffee, you have about half of that caffeine floating around in your head at 8 p.m. If you have all three of those cups, which is not too uncommon, you have over a cup of coffee's worth of caffeine floating around in your head in the evening as you try to go to sleep. Think about that. You have coffee in your head while you're sleeping, while you're trying to get through the most restorative part of your day. Obviously, that's not good. So you're probably thinking, what the hell can I do about this? Like, I'm drinking too much coffee. Speaking to a lot of people, and what has worked with me is just slowly bringing down the strength of those coffees and then reducing the amount of coffees you're drinking. So if you drink 3 cups a day, have 3 weaker cups for a week. Then go down to 2 stronger cups earlier in the day. Then have 2 weak cups. Then eventually go down to 1 strong cup. And if you like, you might get down to the level that I'm at. I don't drink coffee every day. I drink coffee when I need it. If I haven't had a great sleep, if I have to be really alert for something, or if I just want that extra kick of energy that day, those are the days that I'll drink that cup of coffee. And because I don't have it every day, it's really effective when I do drink it. I really do feel alert. So what else? It can't just be caffeine, right? Well, ask yourself this. How often do you move? How often do you stand up? People who work in trades, and for example, carpenters, bricklayers, and people that are moving a lot, they don't generally find this to be an issue or something that really interrupts their sleep, which causes them not to have as much energy. But people like myself, I sit right here for most of the day. And for a lot of you that are watching this, you probably do the same. One of the best ways to feel more energetic is to expend some of that energy. And you might think that's counterintuitive. And honestly, I thought it was too. I thought you wake up, you have this base level of energy, and then at the end of the day, you sort of go through that, and then that's it. You've expended that energy. Turns out our bodies are a bit smarter than that. If, for example, you go for a run, your body understands that it used an extra amount of energy that day, and it has its resources ready the next day because it's expecting you to do something like that. So if you regularly do exercise, your body's going to prepare some energy for you, ready for the next day. And when I say prepare energy for you, I don't mean it's putting food aside in your stomach. It means from the food that you're eating, it segregates and gets energy stored in different places ready for you to expend during the day. But it gets more of it ready for you if you've done some exercise the day before. Additionally, if you do things like lifting weights, your body is restoring and building muscle and doing all those nice things while you sleep. And when you're going through that process, you fall into a much deeper sleep, which keeps you asleep longer and your quality of sleep's better. While we're talking about exercise, I quickly want to talk about diet. Now, I don't want to go into too much detail or say too much about this because diet's really subjective. For a lot of people, what they eat affects them in very different ways. But if you have a Mars bar and a Solo at night, do you really think that's good for your sleep? If you have a big bowl of ice cream and you go through a massive sugar rush at night for dessert after dinner, is that really something that sounds appropriate? Again, common sense comes into play with a lot of this, but I'm just bringing this up to make you aware. Finally, sleep hygiene. I think this is by far the most important one, right after caffeine. We've heard this notion that we're meant to get 8 hours of sleep. I think it's more like 7 to 9 hours of sleep. I need almost 9 hours of sleep. Some people can get away with 7. But it's not just about the quantity. It's also about the quality of your sleep. When we go to sleep, we go through cycles. These cycles are about 90 minutes. And during each of those cycles, we go through non-rapid eye movement sleep, which literally means your eyes don't move around much while you sleep. And that's the time where you're restoring your body, essentially, where you're going through autophagy, you're purging out all the rubbish and stuff like that you absorb throughout the day. We also go through a period of REM sleep, which is a smaller portion of that 90 minutes, and that is rapid eye movement. You ever see somebody dreaming when they're lying down and their eyes are darting around under their eyelids? That's where your brain's going through a kind of a mental cleansing. You're getting rid of all the crap in your brain that you accumulated during the day, as well as going through your thoughts and hence your dreams, and consolidating memories and things like that you learned during the day. Caffeine stops you entering your most deepest states during those 90-minute stages. But I don't want to just talk about caffeine here. Who has a cheeky little beer or a whiskey or a glass of wine as a nightcap to go just before they go to bed? I bet it's quite a few of you. Unfortunately, having alcohol, which might make you get to sleep a lot quicker, actually does disrupt your sleep. One of the byproducts that when your liver is processing alcohol is actually a stimulant. So you might fall asleep quickly, but then once your liver creates that little byproduct while it's getting rid of the alcohol, it might make you up. Now, some people might feel this is sort of just, I didn't feel as good of a sleep, but some people actually wake up. This becomes really apparent after you've had quite a few drinks. You've had 6 beers. I don't know, maybe you had 25. You might fall asleep really easily, but for a lot of people, they wake up in the middle of the night, especially after they've had quite a lot. Another thing that people do to try and help them go to sleep is they might smoke a bit of weed. Now, while this might get you to get into a much deeper non-rapid eye movement sleep stage, there is a lot of evidence to say that you don't enter your rapid eye movement stage of sleep, which is when you're consolidating memories, where you're cleansing your brain, and when your brain's really trying to reset yourself and feel mentally fresh and clear the next day. When you don't enter your REM sleep, those are the days that you wake up and feel really cloudy. Those are the days that you can't concentrate. Rapid eye movement sleep is extremely important. You might have also experienced something else. If you've had too much to drink or you've smoked a little bit too much, you might find that if you sleep and sleep and sleep, in that little period of sleep just before you wake up, you might have some absolutely intense dreams. And this is because your body is desperately trying to catch up on all of the REM sleep that you missed throughout the night. REM sleep is super important. Another point that I want to sort of touch on is your circadian rhythm. Your circadian rhythm is is a part in your brain. It's not a physical thing. It's just a part of your brain that is essentially like your internal clock. You need to have a really stable circadian rhythm for having a good sleeping pattern, feeling refreshed, and waking up feeling great the next day. As soon as you wake up, the first thing you should do is open the blinds, get into the sunlight as quickly as you can, and open up that part of your brain and make yourself feel really alert. At night, when you're trying to shut down and be in that quieter state of mind, stay away from screens. All screens, mobiles, TVs, computer screens for at least an hour before you go to bed. Those screens emit all arrays of light, but they also emit blue light, which I'm sure you've heard about. And blue light is very common in everything, including the sun. It's what your brain uses when it recognizes that it's the start of the day. If it sees light through your eyes at that late at night, it thinks it's the sun, obviously. Another benefit for keeping your phone away from you is staying away from social media, the associated anxiety and all that sort of stuff. And lastly, keeping your room cold. Keeping it cold has been shown to be really effective. Clean sheets, keep it really dark. Those are the more obvious ones, but I just think it's worth mentioning. That's it, really. I hope you learnt a little bit from this video. In summary, like I said, don't drink so much coffee. Drink it only earlier in the day. Stay away from alcohol and things like that are so-called depressants that will help you sleep at night. Move around. Go for a walk. Stand up every hour and a half if you're at a desk. Move around. Expend a little bit of energy so that your body It gets you ready the next day to have that little bit extra energy. Stay away from screens at night. Sleep in a nice, dark, cool place. And don't eat an entire block of chocolate before you go to bed. If you like this video, give it a like down below. Please subscribe. All these things really help me out. Also hit me up with any questions you might have, comments. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Thanks. Love you all. Peace.